War is an algorithm. We will show its price. On February 24, 2022, Russia expected a 3-day operation. 2 years later, the economy had transformed into something it cannot reverse. This is not about winning or losing. This is about the point where continuing becomes cheaper than stopping. The numbers tell the story. Russia's 2021 defense budget, 3.5 trillion rubles, approximately 3.7% of GDP, according to Stockholm International Peace Research Institute data. By 2024, official defense spending reached 6% of GDP, approximately 10.8 trillion rubles. But official figures are incomplete. When you include security services, veterans' benefits, military pensions, and concealed expenditures reclassified as civilian spending, independent economists at Yale School of Management estimate actual military-related spending at 8 to 9% of GDP. This is $160 billion annually. For context, Russia's entire education budget is approximately $70 billion. This is not temporary surge spending. This is structural transformation. The mechanism is simple. In peacetime economy, resources flow to highest return activities: consumer goods, services, technology development, infrastructure. War economy inverts this. Resources flow to immediate military necessity regardless of return. A tank factory operates at full capacity. A car factory does not. The tank produces nothing of civilian value, but it is the priority. And priority, once established, becomes permanent. Consider employment patterns. According to Russian Ministry of Labor data, defense industry employment increased from 2.1 million in 2021 to approximately 3.7 million by late 2024. These workers earn 30 to 40% above national median wage due to mobilization bonuses and overtime. They will not voluntarily accept peacetime wages. Their factories will not voluntarily reduce production. The economic interest in continued war is now embedded in millions of households. The wage spiral compounds. To attract workers to defense production, companies must outbid civilian sector. Civilian sector cannot compete. It lacks wartime margins. So labor flows to military production. This creates civilian sector labor shortage. Labor shortage drives civilian wage inflation. Wage inflation without productivity growth drives overall inflation. By 2024, Russian inflation exceeded 7%, despite central bank rates above 16%. This is mobilization economy mechanics. You cannot reverse it without accepting economic contraction. They said, war spending stimulates the economy through demand. They got unsustainable stimulus that converts productive capacity to consumption of resources with no civilian return. The demographic math is irreversible. According to estimates compiled by Mediazona and BBC Russian Service, confirmed Russian military deaths exceed 70,000, with total casualties including wounded likely exceeding 300,000 by late 2024. These are overwhelmingly men aged 20-40. This is the most economically productive demographic. According to World Bank calculations, each working-age male death represents approximately $500,000 to $1 million in lost lifetime economic output. The aggregate loss, $35 to $70 billion minimum. This is permanent GDP reduction. These workers will never produce. Their children will never be born. Their consumption will never occur. But the living cost more than the dead. Russia now supports approximately 500,000 disabled veterans, according to government disclosures. Lifetime support costs per disabled veteran $100,000 to $300,000, depending on severity. Total liability, $150 billion. This is not discretionary spending. This is contractual obligation. It will be paid for 40, 50 years. Every month of continued war adds another cohort to permanent support roles. The opportunity cost accelerates. The Higher School of Economics in Moscow estimated that by 2024, Russia had lost approximately $250 billion in foreign investment since February 2022. Technology transfers stopped. Joint ventures dissolved. Expertise left. According to Russian statistical agency Rosstat, approximately 700,000 to 1 million primarily educated Russians emigrated in 2022-2023. These are engineers, programmers, doctors, scientists. Average lifetime earnings of this demographic, $800,000 to $1.5 million. Total lost economic output, $560 billion to $1.5 trillion. This is the cost of brain drain. It never reverses. Production patterns show the trap. In 2021, Russian automotive production was 1.7 million vehicles. By 2024, it collapsed to approximately 400,000 units, per Autostat agency data. The factories were not destroyed. They were repurposed, or their workers were diverted. Converting a civilian factory to military production takes 6 to 12 months. Converting it back takes 18 to 36 months, requires capital investment, and assumes demand exists. The workers have retrained. The supply chains have broken. The expertise has dispersed. You cannot simply reverse course. The fiscal trap closes next. Russia's National Welfare Fund, the Sovereign Wealth Reserve, stood at $184 billion in February 2022. By late 2024, it had declined to approximately $140 billion despite high oil prices, according to Russian Finance Ministry data. This is the shock absorber. When oil prices drop or war costs surge, this fund prevents collapse. It is depleting at $20–30 billion annually. At current burn rate, it has 4 to 5 years remaining. After that, the options narrow to 3. Massive spending cuts, hyperinflation, or default. All 3 mean economic collapse. So the fund will be preserved by continuing current policy, which means the war continues. They said oil revenues allow Russia to sustain war indefinitely. They got oil revenues sustaining war until the reserve buffer exhausts, then collapse becomes inevitable. The central bank catches the contradiction. To control inflation, they raised rates to 16% by late 2024. This makes business borrowing impossible. Investment stops, growth stops, but they cannot cut rates. Inflation would explode. They cannot maintain rates. Investment strangles. This is the policy trap of mobilization economy. Every tool that controls one problem worsens another. Consider corporate transformation. According to Russian business surveys, defense contractors operate at 90–100% capacity. Their order books extend through 2026–2027. They have invested in expansion, hired workers, secured supply chains. When war ends, demand crashes. Capacity becomes stranded. Workers are laid off. Investments are lost. So these companies now have economic interest in war continuation. They lobby for it. They are politically powerful, economically dependent. This is the industrial base capturing the state. The comparison illuminates the end point. The Soviet Union maintained mobilization economy for 70 years. Defense spending reached 15–20% of GDP in the 1980s. This was sustainable only through total state control, closed economy, and captive population. When reforms opened the system, it collapsed within 3 years. Russia in 2024 is at 8–9% military spending with partially open economy and mobile population. The contradictions are already visible. To sustain current trajectory requires Soviet-level control. To avoid Soviet-level control requires ending mobilization. There is no middle path. The math is simple. Every month of war adds 5,000, 10,000 to permanent casualty support roles. 3 to 5% more GDP shifted to military production. $3 to $5 billion more in depleted reserves. 50,000, 100,000 more immigrants with skills. Another increment of locked-in defense industry capacity. These are sunk costs. Sunk costs drive escalation of commitment. Escalation of commitment prevents rational exit. This is the algorithm of mobilization economy. It is not designed to win, it is designed to continue. The reconstruction cost completes the trap. Even if war ended tomorrow, according to estimates by Ukrainian government and World Bank, rebuilding Ukraine requires $400–500 billion. Russia would bear portion of this through reparations or frozen asset seizure, likely $200–300 billion. Russia's current reserve fund, $140 billion. The gap is unbridgeable, so peace becomes economically catastrophic. Continuing war, though expensive, remains cheaper than ending it and facing the bill. They said economic pressure will force Russia to negotiate. They got economic transformation that makes negotiation more expensive than fighting. The workers understand this. Defense industry employees earning $2,000, $3,000 monthly, no peacetime wages are $1,000, $2,500. Veterans receiving $500, $800 monthly disability know these payments are politically untouchable. Defense contractors with full order books know civilian demand will not replace military orders. These are millions of people whose economic interest is war continuation. In democracy or autocracy, millions of people with aligned economic interest shape policy. The final calculation is generational. Russia's working-age population was already declining. Negative natural population growth since 1991. The war accelerated this. According to demographic projections by the UN Population Division, Russia will lose an additional 10–15 million working-age population by 2050 under current trajectory. This is not battlefield deaths. This is demographic collapse from low birth rates, emigration, and war casualties compounding. The economic impact is $2 to $3 trillion in lost GDP over that period. This is not reversible with policy. This is biological reality. Mobilization economy made sense for three-day war. After 2 years, it is the economy. The factories are converted. The workers are trained. The wages are set. The obligations are incurred. Reversing this is not policy choice. It is economic crisis. So it will not be reversed. And if it cannot be reversed, it must be sustained. And sustaining it requires war. This is the point of no return. It is not psychological. It is not political. It is economic. The cost of continuing is high. The cost of stopping is higher. When that equation holds, war does not end. It is maintained at sustainable loss rate for indefinite duration. The algorithm is complete. Mobilization transforms economy. Transformed economy cannot peacefully revert. Inability to revert creates interests in continuation. Interests in continuation become political power. Political power prevents exit. Exit prevention becomes strategic necessity. They thought mobilization was a means to victory. It became an end in itself. The price is not measured in rubles spent. It is measured in decades lost.